Hi everyone, this new video is about my newest Oncidium, which you see before you. I don't have an ID for it yet because it is a supermarket purchase and they never come with IDs. So if you do have an ID for this one, let me know because I'd be very interested, and then I could label it and look up something about its potential heritage and know a little bit more about the plant, which I always enjoy. So let me start off by telling you the story of how I got this orchid. Me and my boyfriend, Hugo, we went to buy some groceries, and one of the things we had to get was whiskey for his father, because it was Father's Day coming up and we know he really liked whiskey and he hadn't had any Swiss whiskey yet. So we figured we'd get some Swiss whiskey for him. So we go there and we realize that, I realized that I don't have my ID on me. And I don't know how it is in other countries, but in Switzerland and in the Netherlands as well, you need to show your ID to prove that you're, 18 plus before you can buy something like whiskey. And it doesn't really matter how old you look, you still have to be able to supply your ID. So I decide to kind of subtly just sidle away from him and make my way through the counter with one item, and then I go and I sniff the orchids that are opposite the supermarket. And I find this one. And I'm stunned by it because you have this interesting velvety dark pink lip and then the white and the yellow accents, and I hadn't seen anything like it before. So I was quite intrigued by it, and I knew that was a bad idea to buy it. Reasons being that, first of all, I'd already said that I would try and not buy orchids from supermarkets, just because they tend to be worse quality and they tend not to have tags, and I do like to have IDs with my plants. But then this one was so interesting. So in an attempt to not buy this plant, I decided I need outside help. So I take a picture and I send it to my friend Annabelle, who also has a YouTube channel called The Orchid Room. You can check her out via the link below. We actually started YouTube at around the same time, so we're like each other's support group. And I told her to dissuade me from buying this plant because I was going on a trip, it would not be a good idea, just don't let me buy this plant, give me good reasons. And she totally dropped the ball on me. Instead, the first thing she said is that she loves it. And I tell her, no, Annabelle, you're supposed to dissuade me. And she asked me how much it costs and whether it looks healthy. And I was like, yeah, it looks pretty healthy. Like the pseudobulbs, they look nice and plump. It's all good. It has a good amount of pseudobulbs. It doesn't look like a sad little plant that has like 1 or 2 pseudobulbs. So healthy enough. And like, she's terrible at dissuading people. Never get Annabelle to dissuade you to buy an orchid. It doesn't work. In fact, never ask fellow orchid collectors to dissuade you to not get an orchid. It's a dumb idea. I don't know what I expected. Anyway, I decided to stay strong because I knew that Hugo, my boyfriend, was right behind me getting the whiskey, and he would not be pleased if he walked out seeing me holding a plant. So I don't get it, and he comes out and he's not holding the whiskey. So I ask him, where's the whiskey? And he said, well, he forgot his ID as well. So we walk out of the supermarket and we don't have whiskey, and we wonder what we're going to do. And while we're thinking about this, I show him the plant. I go like, oh look, it's really cool. It has like this almost black petals and this really cool like pinkish velvety lip. And he's like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool actually. And then we talk a bit more about what we're going to do about the whiskey, because we needed the whiskey for his dad. We're going to fly, I think it was the next day. And at some point, I just kind of really carefully kind of look at him and I go like, well, I could go home and get my ID and then come back to the supermarket to get the whiskey, but I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to stop myself from buying the plant a second time. And he just looks at me, and you can see the cogs in his head, he was just calculating and thinking and wondering, like, what's the lesser of two evils? Then he just kind of shrugs and he goes, okay, go get your plant. And my mouth just kind of drops open. I was like, he's actually encouraging me to get a plant? And it turns out he liked the plant. He likes the way it looks. So off I go. I run home. I get my ID. I go back. And I run into the plant. And it's still there. So I get it. And I come home. And I'm happy. And everything's good. And life is wonderful. And then I realized when I got home that the plant has mealybugs. I did not notice that in the store at all. So I freak out a little bit because I had never seen mealybugs before. I'd never dealt with them. I don't know what to do. So I spent ages trying to pick off every little bit of white that I can see and spraying it all with hydrogen peroxide and, doing the works. Because I was going to be flying the next day. I didn't want to come back to an entire infestation of mealybugs, possibly even spread throughout my entire collection. That was a no-go. So I worked on that for quite a while. I went on my trip and I came back and I did not see any more mealybugs, so I guess I must have gotten them all. However, yesterday I was taking a look and I saw a bush snail on the top of my media. Now, bush snails are not okay because they do so much damage, and if I see a bush snail, I'm going to repot ASAP. Doesn't matter if it's in flower or not, doesn't matter if it's the right time of year. If I see a snail, I am repotting. So here we are today, ready for a repotting video. And I'm back with a plate or tray to do my repotting on. So first dilemma I have is that these pseudobulbs are shriveling a little bit because I should have watered maybe a day or two ago, I think. And usually a general advice is to soak them before repotting. First of all, to make the roots more flexible during repotting and make it less likely to hurt something. And second of all, to just rehydrate the pseudobulbs so they have results to draw upon while they try and acclimate to the new potting environment and potting medium. Now, on one hand, why wouldn't I follow that advice, right? On the other hand, I'm pretty sure this is potted in coco peat, and that tends to be easier to take apart when it's dry, from what I know. Also, this is actually not that dry. This feels relatively moist. It could be moister, but it's not dry. Anyway, you can see how easily it's falling apart. So I'm thinking that maybe I'll do less damage by keeping it dry. I've never tried it before, so I figure why not give it a try? Everything first time, right? So make sure to keep your tag. This tag, of course, doesn't actually have an ID on it, but I still like to keep it just so I can remember where I actually got it from. And put it to the side, and then get rid of the pot. You can see that a lot of the media already kind of crumbled off. Oh, actually, before I continue, I think I'll remove the flower spikes. Not the flower spikes, sorry, the stakes. The stakes with the flower spikes. Because otherwise that might become a little bit difficult. There we go. Oh, wait, let me put this on camera. Just remove them as gently as I can. The flowers don't look like they're too heavy, so I think I can take it. It's not gonna snap the spikes or anything like that. There we go. That's the spikes gone. I mean, the stakes. Thankfully the spikes are still there. Let's focus that on the right spot. There we go. Alright, let's continue. So you can see once dry, the coco peat falls apart way more easily. It just kind of crumbles off without you having to do anything. And as usual, you have the sphagnum plug in the middle. Nurseries really like using those to keep their plants moist enough with all the circulation they're providing. Now, whenever I repot a plant, like a new plant that I hadn't repotted before, I'm always a little bit paranoid of encountering bugs. I'm not a hero when it comes to bugs, I'm really not. I wish I was a little bit better at them, and I am getting better, you know, exposure therapy and all that. Well, not literally therapy, but, you know, just repotting plants and getting into contact with them. But, yeah, I do kind of wish I was a little bit better at that. At the same time, I don't want to get better at it, because it probably means I have to encounter more bugs. Either way. So far, this repotting is going quickly and easily. All falling away without a problem. Just gonna keep gently massaging the potting medium and let it fall out between the roots. I haven't encountered, or at least I haven't spotted, any more snails since I started removing the medium, so maybe it was just a single one. So they can't reproduce if there's just one, right? Stands to reason, at least. Do they reproduce asexuality? Not with eggs, surely. I should look that up. Seems like something I should know. This root system doesn't look great, honestly. Not compared to my previous repot. Which, by the way, I tried filming my previous repot, and my camera kept giving up on me after 8 minutes. I realized belatedly after I thought I filmed the whole thing, that apparently the camera can't record for longer than 8 minutes when it records in 4K. Now, first of all, I don't need to be recording in 4K. I'm not even publishing in 4K, so that was silly. But also it meant that most of my repotting wasn't recorded, so you won't be seeing that one, I'm afraid. So nice thing with sphagnum as well, if you don't wet it before you repot it, is that it doesn't really become as clingy. It doesn't really expand as much. So it's easier to spot and remove from the roots. Oh, sorry, I've been off camera. I wish I had some sort of warning system telling me, like, beware, your orchid is off camera. No one can see what you're doing. Everyone's just staring at a blind, unmoving screen. Next time, I think I'll tell you my story of how I got the orchid while I'm repotting, because I realize it must be quite boring to watch a repot without anything being said, without me telling you stuff. And I don't really think there's much to tell at the moment. So instead of telling my whole story beforehand, I could tell it now. Let's see. Did I get most of the stuff? Still quite a lot of sphagnum around here. Sorry, off camera again. My bad. Still odd to work around the camera, so to say. Like the camera's between me and the plant, and that takes some getting used to. Also means I can't speak too loudly, because otherwise the mic will probably end up having some strange sound artifacts. There's quite a lot of technical planning to do with making YouTube videos if you want to make them well. I have lots to learn in that domain. Okay, I have something to tell you now. You see you have some roots here, yeah? Wait, let me zoom in on them. Let me zoom in, zoom. You see this little root over here, yeah? You see how it seems kind of like hollow? And this one as well, actually, and quite a few others. That would be the snail damage. The snails like to go into the roots, especially the tips, get to like the tender new growth, and then munch its way inside, eating all that beautiful, tender, green new growth. Oh, there's so many here as well. Oh, I wish I spotted it earlier. It really did a number on this orchid. Well, we can only hope that the rest of the roots will still maintain it well enough, and that it will swiftly create a new growth, from which we'll get new healthy roots. Hopefully this time without snail interference. But yeah, that's why snails can be so destructive, because they go after the newest growth. And if you know anything about sympodial orchids, is that the newest growth is the future of the plant. It's the most important part. It's where all the new growths come from, all the new leaves come from, all new roots come from. The rest of the plant doesn't typically really make any new roots. So if you have a snail attack and it goes for the newest growth, and the newest growth kind of gets stunted, you know, it really sets the plant back quite a lot. It sometimes even kills the plant if you're not on there to take care of the snail problem fast enough, because it'll just eat all the new stuff that your plant's putting out, and you just won't have a chance to recover. Slowly whittle away. Okay, I'm just going to go to the sink now, and I'm going to remove the last of the media under some running water, and then I'll be back. Okay, actually, I rinsed my root system at the sink, and I came back and I quickly went through the media, and I noticed that there was another snail over there. You see that little snail shell? That's a little bush snail right there. And if there's one, who knows how many of them are there? This is the second one I found so far, because I already got rid of the other one. So yeah, I don't really feel like going through it and trying to find all of them, but at least I've got evidence that there were more. So I'm quite happy I got out the pot. Alright, I've gotten rid of the old medium, I've thrown out all the bush snails, hopefully, there are no more left. But just to make sure of that, I'm going to spray the plant with some hydrogen peroxide 3%. I got this idea from Miss Orchid Girl on YouTube. If you don't know her, you can check her out, I'll put a link down below. She has some really great videos for beginners especially. And she has a very clean presentation style as well, just high quality videos. I haven't watched her much recently because I feel like a lot of her videos are getting a little bit repetitive, which, well, is to be expected when you put out one video each day about orchids. But definitely, especially for people who don't know her yet and who are beginners, I recommend you check her out. So this is one of the things I learned from her. Hydrogen peroxide works very well in destroying both snails, but also snail eggs, which are the ones that are difficult to get rid of. So you just take the hydrogen peroxide 3% and you just spray the root system as well as you can. Don't worry about it, it's not really dangerous. I know a lot of people like, you know, you have this joke about two chemists walking into a bar. One of them saying, I would like to order some H2O. The next one saying, I'd like to order some H2O too. And then the second one dying, you know. But don't worry about that. It's not nearly that dangerous. Sure, don't drink it. That's a different story, you know. But if you spray your hand, it might feel a little bit a bit dry, slightly irritated maybe, but it's not actually dangerous. So don't worry about that. If you feel better about it, go ahead and put on some gloves. But you don't need to worry for your health. It's best also to spray in between the pseudobulbs. Just spray everywhere, wherever you can reach. Just because the snails really like to get to where the most moist places are, and that tends to be between the pseudobulbs, between the leaves, and of course in the base of the root ball. So that's where you should focus your spraying. Now, in addition to snails, I do believe this also has some effect on other creepy crawlies. I've sprayed a centipede and watched it die and wriggle in front of me with horror. I have mixed feelings about doing that, but I got rid of the centipede. So, there we have it all sprayed. The root system is also being cleaned up at the top. And now what we can do is try and trim it and get rid of the old roots. Now, I used to be quite strict with clearing the roots. I would clear away anything that didn't seem really healthy. I've since changed my mind on that, because sometimes that meant I was left with plants that had very few roots, and that meant that it wouldn't anchor properly in the potting medium, and also meant it had very little to fall back on. And I found actually that the plants on which I leave at least some of the not that healthy roots, maybe even some dead roots if need be, tend to do and recover a lot better than the ones that I cut everything away from. So anything that's very obviously, very clearly dead and not very decomposing, I'll get rid of. But anything that kind of looks like it might still hold some sort of function and possibly help or anchor the plant, I think I'll keep it, because my past experience has shown me that that's the better way for me to pot my orchids. So I'll go through. I'm afraid there won't be that many good roots actually on this orchid. A little bit worried about that. Oh, you see how easily that came off? I did not put much force on that. That's a very dead root, even though it looked like it might still be alright. Well, the rest feels better, so I think I might leave it anyway, and it's also quite thick and might help in anchoring the plant well enough. See how easily it comes away? These are so dead. This one's very dead, look at that. Alright, so I'm gonna... Now I'm hoping to come across some really good roots as well. So far, I haven't. Everything's dead. Oh, look at that. I'm really not putting much force on that. Not at all. This is not me pulling too hard. I want to find at least one good root. Give me one good root. Nope, I thought this would be one, but it's still breaking apart like it's nothing. The side branches still feel quite solid though. I think this one, it's not great, but it's more alive than the rest. I'm just gonna keep it. I'm gonna like bet on it. I'm gonna hope it does well. Bet on it, bet on it. No, please don't sing High School Musical. Alright. I'm gonna keep that as well. Oh my god. The root system is horrible. Horrible, horrible, horrible. How did it even plump up in the first place? I mean, the fact that it did plump up means that some of these roots must be functional, even if they are breaking apart really quickly and... like, oh... Some of this must be fun. Okay, so I know from the fact that this plant plumped up the 2-3 times that I watered it, that it is taking up water. Some of these roots are working. However, when I go through them, I see nothing good. I see most of them that just seem dead. Like, you saw it, development comes apart so incredibly easily. But the evidence speaks for itself. It is taking up water. It is plumping up. So I'm going to stop working on this root system since I can't tell which ones are functioning and which ones are not. I'm just going to pot it up as is. I know it means that I'll have a lot of dead decomposing roots in the media, but that's better than not having any roots. So I'm just going to leave it be. Hopefully the roots that were plumping it up before are still there, are untouched, unscathed, and will continue to plump it up until it manages to push out a new growth with new roots. Now I'm going to get my sphagnum moss and I'll be right back. And I'm back. Alright, so I've got my pot with my usual wick in it. It doesn't mean that I'll immediately put it into self-watering, but it means that I can in the future. So I always put a wick in my pots because why not? And then I've got my sphagnum moss over here. I've moistened it slightly to make it a little bit easier to work with. And of course my plant. So the first step will be to put a layer of sphagnum moss at the bottom. There we go. Just put a little layer there. Right, it doesn't need to be too much. I just prefer not having the roots immediately on the bottom. I prefer giving them a little bit of room to grow before they hit the bottom. I'm not quite sure why I do that, honestly. It's just the way I do it. If I find evidence to that the other way is better, or you know, then I'll just change my mind on that. But for now, I'll just do it this way. Okay, and then you just put the plant in there. The best thing you can do is to try and find out which of the pseudobulbs are the newest ones, because those are usually the ones where the new growths will sprout from. Now, how do you find out which the newest ones are? Well, usually in Oncidiums, it's the ones that are flowering. So in this case, this pseudobulb here has a flower spike. It's probably a new one. Same goes for, hold on, this one here. You see the flower spike? This one's probably new. And that's the two of them that are blooming. So those are definitely new. It's usually also the biggest one, at least if the plant has had a healthy progression. So you want to put those in the middle. Now, unfortunately, these are on the opposite side of the plants. I'm wondering now whether this pot's actually big enough, but I don't want to give it a bigger pot either because the root system isn't that extensive. So I guess I'll just have to pluck it out and put it in a new pot if this one gets too small. Either way, I think that because the two new growths are on opposite sides of the plant, I'm best off just putting it simply in the middle. And we'll see where that gets us. Before we put it in, it's always best to put a little bit of sphagnum moss in the root ball before you throw it into the pot, just because it's hard to get sphagnum moss in the center of the root ball if it's already in the pot. See what I mean? Good luck getting sphagnum moss in the center of this mass of roots, unless you've put it there before you put it into the pot. And then you just take some sphagnum moss and you place it around the plant. Try and fill up some holes. It doesn't need to be entirely filled up. Especially with sphagnum moss, I don't want to pack it too tightly either. I like leaving it a little bit more airy. I like leaving all of my media a bit more airy. And then if the plant prefers more water, I'll just put in self-watering or water it more often. So far that seems to work. Don't want to hurt that little new growth there, if you can see it. It's a tiny little new growth down there. See that little bit of green down there? Yes, so hopefully that will develop properly and get us some more new and healthy roots, because we are in need of some new healthy roots. We really are. See, I'm gonna get some more sphagnum moss. A little bit. There we go. There we go. Spotting it in. Snug enough that it doesn't move too much. Airy enough that it doesn't suffocate. You don't want the roots to suffocate. That's the opposite of what you want. You want to be happy and healthy and hydrate the plant. There we go. If I ever block what I'm doing from the camera, I apologize in advance. I'm still quite clumsy with the tripod and with filming and trying to make sure that what I'm doing is visible both to me and to my viewers. Because I want to know what I'm doing, of course. But what's the point of filming if you can't see, right? Alright. So I think I'm happy with the amount of sphagnum moss in there. I don't think I need any more. Let me just check the size to see how it looks. Let me just focus on it. There we go. You can see some roots over there on the side. Oh well. There's quite a gap over there, but I'm not sure if I can get any moss in there, especially not without hurting the roots. Well, just gonna leave it as is, like this. It's always a difficult bit I find with sphagnum moss. Leca you can just kind of slide between the roots, but moss is difficult. Alright, it looks decent enough. I think I'm okay with that. I'm happy with it. And I don't think that I really need to give it back its stakes, because the flower spikes are staying upright without an issue. It's doing just fine. So I think they'll be fine as is without the stakes, which is great because sphagnum moss isn't the best for stabilizing stakes anyway. So that's it all potted up. Alright then, repot completed, with the exception of, and I always forget this until I see it lying around somewhere, the tag, so I'll just slot it in like that. And that's it. Thank you very much for watching this repot. Remember, if you know any ID, please do let me know below in the comment section. I'd be very interested in finding out. And I hope to see you again next time.